going to attend the press conference today to deal with a particular issue which is plastered. Excuse me, who's handling the audio? Okay, seems to be some feedback here. Just hold on. Just call that young lady in the back there for me, please. Has the feedback? They're checking the feedback? Okay. Good to go now? Thank you very much. Okay, there's a particular issue that is in the newspapers, has been in the newspapers for some time. And I thought it was necessary at this time. I've brought the Attorney General with me as well to address a particular issue that he is in charge of or responsible for, and which he is best placed to speak on. But I would like to indicate to the media and the listening public that there is a particular impression that I am seeing being cemented in the media, in particular in the daily newspapers, which contains a false impression that needs to be corrected. So there's a press release that I have prepared which will be circulated to all media, but I will read the press release for you. So I have noted, as Minister of Finance, I have noted a number of articles in the daily newspapers in recent days which would lead members of the public to believe that it is the Minister of Finance himself who prepares and submits the national public accounts to the Auditor General, and that the Minister of Finance backdated the public accounts for 2023. This is despite the fact that these same newspapers have reported the Minister's previous public statements, which make it clear that the national public accounts are prepared and submitted by public officers in the Treasury and not by him, and that no Minister of Finance has submitted these accounts to any Auditor General for decades, if ever. Of significance in this media campaign is an allegation made in a letter dated April the 28th, 2024, written by Freedom Law Chambers, which is headed by the former UNC Attorney General Anand Logan, SC, purportedly on behalf of the Auditor General as follows. And I'm quoting now from that particular April 28th letter. Contrary to what was stated in Parliament, our client did in fact receive the amended national accounts from the MOF. She had two sets of public accounts in her possession. The public accounts for the financial year 2023 with a statement of declaration and certification dated January 31st, 2024, showing a statement of revenue figure of $61,890,373,020.22, and the amended public accounts for the financial year 2023 with a statement of declaration and certification dated January 31st, 2024, showing a statement of revenue figure of $64,488,503,781.94. Again, I'm still quoting from the letter. Both the original and amended statements were dated and signed January 31st, 2024. This is despite the error which caused the amendment being discovered in March 2024, long after the statutory deadline of January 31st, 2024. It is clear from this that the MOF simply backdated the original accounts and replaced the old revenue figure with the new one. It did so without showing any amendment to the national accounts. This would give the impression that the original accounts, which were submitted within the statutory deadline, had all along carried this higher revenue figure where this is not factually correct. Our client quite properly viewed this as an unethical attempt to backdate the original national accounts, which were submitted to her to cover what was a financial mistake of unprecedented magnitude with grave financial, economic, and political implications. So, end quote. When the Minister of Finance saw this serious allegation, me, about the backdating of the public accounts, not having been involved in the preparation of the original or amended public accounts for 2023, he sought clarification, this is I, from the public servants involved. The minister was advised, myself, that between April the 9th, 2024 and April 15th, 2024, the staff in the Treasury attempted on several occasions to provide the Auditor General with the amended public accounts, and in that period sent to the Auditor General by TT Post the amended public accounts. Those accounts which were delivered by TT Post to the Auditor General's Department on the 15th of April 2024 included the Exchequer account and the statement of receipts and disbursements which were each certified, and those certificates were dated with the dates on which the accounts were certified, that is to say the 8th of April 2024 and the 5th of April 2024, respectively. However, a copy of the previous statement of declaration and certification dated 31st January 2024, which had been included in the original public accounts submitted to the Auditor General on that date, was also inadvertently included in the amended public accounts delivered to the Auditor General on the 15th of April 2024. Following that, by letter dated the 15th of April 2024, the Auditor General wrote to the Attorney General stating, and this is important, that the Ministry of Finance was free to recall the public accounts previously submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, and to provide her with revised public accounts. Pursuant to that letter, on the 16th of April 2024, the Ministry of Finance wrote to the Auditor General recalling the public accounts submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, and provided to the Auditor General amended public accounts that included a statement of declaration and certification dated 16th April 2024. Those amended public accounts were accepted by the Auditor General as replacing the public accounts previously submitted to her. Thus, contrary to the allegations made in the letter of April 28, 2024, from Freedom Law Chambers, the statement of declaration and certification included in the amended public accounts that were submitted to and accepted by the Auditor General on the 16th of April 2024 in substitution for the accounts previously submitted on and dated 31st January 2024 was signed and dated April 16th, 2024 by all three public servants who signed that statement and not January 31st, 2024 as alleged in the April 28th letter. A copy of the signed and dated statement of declaration and certification included in the amended public accounts accepted by the Auditor General on the 16th April 2024, together with a copy of the memorandum from the Controller of Accounts to the Auditor General, on the cover of which those public accounts were submitted to the Auditor General, is attached and will be circulated. This is a press release. In conclusion, I say that according to the information provided to me by the public servants involved, any allegation that the amended public accounts submitted to and accepted by the Auditor General on the 16th April 2024 was backdated is patently false.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I considered it important that I should accompany the Honorable Prime Minister acting here today to say a few words. But I want to stress that what I am going to say is limited. And it is limited for the reason that you would all know now that the Auditor General has commenced legal proceedings against the Office of the Attorney General. That's in Civil Action 2024, number 01542. And out of respect for the judicial process, I think it is prudent that I should, as a defendant in court proceedings, restrain myself from commenting on those court proceedings. The Honorable Prime Minister, acting in his substantive position as Minister of Finance, has disclosed the full true facts of this matter, and it will, at the end of the day, be ventilated in the courtroom where I am now a defendant. But I want to make a statement with reference to those court proceedings, which is a repetition of a statement that I made yesterday, because I consider it very important in the arena of responsible journalism that I repeat as often as possible the true facts, so that in the reporting that the media engages in, the true facts are reported. I do that for the reason that I very much regret that in the reporting that I have read so far on this matter, there has been a significant degree of sensationalization that has not attempted to report accurately on the true facts. And I say that in respect of one particular aspect of this unfortunate development. That is to say, members of the media will recall, because it has been very much in the newspapers, that the Auditor General wrote to me on the 17th of April, making a specific request of me in my capacity as Attorney General for legal representation. That request was for legal representation to give her an opinion on sections 24 and 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act, Chapter 6901. I took legal advice on that, and I replied to the Auditor General on the 19th of April 2024. And at the risk of repeating myself, I am going to once more read into the record the reply which I sent to the Auditor General on that day. And it reads as follows: I acknowledge receipt of your letter dated the 17th of April 2024 with attachments, requesting my advice on whether the Auditor General is required to consider the amended statements referred to in your said letter in light of the provisions of sections 24 and 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act. Consistent with my duty under the Constitution, and as you are aware, I am already advising the Honourable Minister of Finance on this very matter. I refer to the pre-action protocol letter dated the 16th April 2024, which is one of the attachments to your said letter to me. In the circumstances, it would be inappropriate for me to render any advice to you on this matter. I recommend that with all appropriate urgency, you should retain independent legal counsel to give you such advice. I give the undertaking as Attorney General that I am prepared to pay reasonable fees incurred by you as Auditor General for the retention and obtaining of that independent advice. End of quote. Subsequent to my writing to the Auditor General in those terms, I had no further correspondence nor any word from the Auditor General. On the 24th of April, I was advised that the Auditor General had sent her audit report, her purported audit report, to the Parliament, to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and to the President of the Senate. And subsequent to that, I received a letter from Mr. Anand Ramlogan's chambers making a number of allegations against me, including the fact that I was being called on, consistent with my earlier promise to provide for the legal representation of his Freedom Law chambers. I replied to that letter by letter of the 29th of April 2024. And I quote the letter which I replied by, written by the Chamber's Director of the Attorney General's Secretariat, written on my behalf, dated the 29th of April, to Freedom Law Chambers, Mr. Ramlogan's chambers, and it said this: I write on behalf of the Honorable Attorney General. Your letter dated the 28th April 2024 to the Honorable Minister of Finance has been drawn to the attention of the Honorable Attorney General. In that letter, you have stated that by letter dated 19th of April 2024, the Attorney General recommended that the Auditor General seek her own counsel. Please be advised that by letter dated 17th of April 2024, the Attorney General sought the advice of the Auditor General, sought the advice of the Attorney General on whether she is required to consider the amended statements in light of the provisions of sections 24 and 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act. In response to that letter, the Attorney General recommended to the Auditor General that she should retain independent counsel to give such advice. He also stated that he was prepared to pay reasonable fees incurred by the Auditor General for the retention and obtaining of that independent advice. It is clear that the recommendations and undertaking of the Attorney General was specific and related and confined solely to the advice sought by the Auditor General in her letter to him of the 17th April 2024, and not in respect of any other advice or matter. Please be guided accordingly. I repeat the contents of those two letters, ladies and gentlemen, to put it beyond doubt that insofar as it is being reported that I have refused as Attorney General to pay for legal fees for the Auditor General, that is not correct. I was very clear throughout in my correspondence regarding my willingness to pay the reasonable legal costs as it relates to the retention of counsel for the advice sought by the Auditor General, and any reports to the contrary are erroneous and I fear appear deliberately to mislead. As I've said at the beginning of my statement today, whilst there is no doubt much that members of the media will want to inquire after, I have to respect the fact that I am now a defendant in proceedings. I have to respect the judicial process, and therefore, other than confirming the fact that at my request as legal advisor to the Minister of Finance, I have retained eminent senior counsel and junior counsel who have been advising the Minister of Finance throughout this matter. I would wish to say nothing further. Thank you very much.
Hearing me? All right. Floor is open for questions.
That was quite a very lengthy, a little hard to follow. But I think what we guess from it is at a point in time, you're saying that you would agree to pay fees for a particular issue at a particular time, but are you saying that it's not for ongoing into the future? Is this what you were saying?
Can I be clear? Are you hearing me? This is on. Yeah. Can I be clear? What I'm saying is that the Auditor General wrote to me with a specific request for legal representation. I responded to her and told her that given that I was advising the Minister of Finance, I could not advise her, but I encouraged her in very clear language to proceed urgently to retain independent legal counsel from whom she could take advice on the specific matter that she had sought my advice. And I went on to give the undertaking in writing to the Auditor General, excuse me, that I would be prepared to pay her reasonable legal fees for the retention of such advice. Since then, I have received correspondence from Mr. Anand Ramlogan's chambers requiring me to do more than that, and I have made it very clear that I have a duty to make sure that the public purse is managed responsibly. I reiterated my commitment to pay legal fees for that which the Auditor General had requested, an opinion on the true construction of sections 24 and 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act, and beyond that, I am not prepared to commit the public purse to any more fees.
Can you tell us what Section 4, remind us what Section 4 and 25 of the Audit and Exchequer Act?
Sections 24 and 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act are the sections of the Act that prescribe the part of the process by which, in the time frame that begins when the financial reports are provided to the Auditor General for the preceding year. So in this case, what we are about is the financial year 2023. And what section, the Exchequer and Audit Act and sections of the Constitution in this particular circumstance prescribe is a time frame, so that 4 months after the report is submitted, and in this case the report was submitted on the 31st of January, 4 months thereafter the Auditor General is to put in her report, and sections 24 and 25 deal with that timetable and obligations in that regard.
I mean, is there any chance that Ms. Ramdas may have been under the impression that she actually would have had access to legal counsel for a longer time than that?
I can't speak for what Ms. Ramdas may have been under the impression that she understood or wished to do. I'm sorry.
Mr. Attorney General, my understanding is that the Department of the Auditor General is paid from the Consolidated Fund. If that is true, would not the legal fees accumulated by the Auditor General's Department also come from the Consolidated Fund?
Mr. Wilson, you are asking me to broaden my commentary on litigation that is before the court. I'm not going to engage in that conversation.
I haven't mentioned litigation at all.
Well, I know what's in the litigation. I've read it. So I'm not going to comment on a matter that is now actively before the courts, in which I'm a defendant.
Okay.
But is this now going to boil down to an individual against the might of the state? Like if Ms. Ramdas has her case and then she can't fund it, is that equitable?
You're asking me for a subjective, non-legal answer to a question that I'm not competent to answer.
Can I ask the Minister of Finance, the acting Prime Minister? You said, I believe, that there was an inadvertent inclusion of documents dated January 31st that was submitted to the Department, Auditor General's Department. Yes?
I'm waiting for you to finish your
Okay, so that inadvertent inclusion was whose responsibility? Can you say?
Let's put this matter in context. In the press release, which you will get shortly after this press conference is completed, I made the following statement, which I think bears repeating, that by letter dated the 15th of April 2024, the Auditor General wrote to the Attorney General stating that the Ministry of Finance was free to recall the public accounts previously submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, and to provide her with revised public accounts pursuant to that letter. On the 16th of April 2024, the Ministry of Finance wrote to the Auditor General recalling the public accounts submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, consistent with the letter received from the Auditor General. I just want to repeat, the Auditor General said that the Ministry of Finance was free to recall the public accounts previously submitted on and dated January 31st and to provide her with revised public accounts. Pursuant to her letter, on the 16th of April, the Ministry of Finance wrote to the Auditor General recalling the public accounts submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, and provided to the Auditor General amended public accounts that included a statement of declaration and certification dated the 16th of April 2024. Okay, I actually have that with me, which will be, you'll get a copy of it. So you will see that the amended public accounts that were submitted and received and accepted by the Auditor General, accepted in terms of physical acceptance, the accepted delivery of, are signed by 3 senior public servants, the accounting officer in the Ministry of Finance, permanent secretary at the time, dated April 16th in her handwriting, the controller of accounts, dated April 16th also in her hand, and the Treasury Director, dated April 16th in the Treasury Director's hand. So this is what is called the Statement of Declaration and Certification that was submitted with the amended public accounts. And this accompanied a letter, which you will get as well. Just let me read out the letter. I have a copy here. And this was a letter written by the permanent secretary on that particular day. And this letter reads as follows. It's written to the Auditor General. It's dated April 16, 2024. It's stamped, received 16th of April 2024 by the Auditor General's Department. And it's headed Recall of the Public Accounts for the financial year ended September 30th, 2023, and Submission of Revised Public Accounts. And the Permanent Secretary told the Auditor General the following. I hereby recall the public accounts submitted on and dated January 31st, 2024, due to the inaccuracies subsequently discovered in the Statement of Declaration and Certification. I now hereby submit 8 copies of the revised public accounts, along with the revised collated CD containing the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2023, for your attention and consideration in the preparation of the Auditor General's report. I certify that the revised public accounts and the contents of the revised collated CD are accurate. Yours sincerely, Permanent Secretary, 16th of April, 2024. And I take you back to what I read before, that in the April 28th letter written by Freedom Law to the Attorney General, this statement was made. Both the original and amended statements were dated and signed January 31st, 2024. The amended public accounts for the financial year with a statement of declaration and certification. This is the important thing. With a statement of declaration and certification dated January 31st, 2024, and then the allegation that the MOF backdated the original accounts. What happened is that between the beginning of April and the 16th of April, the public servants were attempting to deliver the documents to the Auditor General's Department with the corrections of the error that had been made. And they were unable to do so. So they tried all sorts of different means. They tried physically delivering it. They were unable to do so. They tried sending it by email. That didn't work. So they sent the documents via TT Post. And in those documents, as I've said, there were a number of different documents. Some were dated the 5th of April, some were dated the 8th of April, and In that pile of documents was a copy of the original certification dated January 31st. Okay? But the actual statement of declaration and certification that accompanied the amended public accounts that the Auditor General agreed to receive on the 16th of April 2024 was dated 16th of April 2024. So I go to my last line. But according to the information provided to me by the public servants involved, any allegation that the amended public account submitted to and accepted by the Auditor General on the 16th of April 2024 was backdated is patently false. It would have been one of the persons collating all the documents that would have put that document in there. But it was simply a copy. It wasn't an original signed document. It was simply a copy of a document that had been sent before.
So that issue of backdating of the amended public accounts, as far as you're concerned, is that still an issue?
As far as I'm concerned, let me read again. So,
First time.
let me give it to you the second time, since clearly I did not make myself clear. Because if you're asking me again, according to me, let me just say, according to the information provided to me by the public servants involved, any allegation that the amended public accounts submitted to and accepted by the Auditor General on the 16th April 2024 was backdated is patently false. You have to remember that it is only on the 15th of April that the Auditor General, in response to a letter written by the Attorney General, on the same 15th of April, the Attorney General wrote the Auditor General asking the Auditor General to accept the amended public accounts on the 15th of April, and the Auditor General wrote back, said a number of things, but one of the things said was that the Ministry of Finance is free to recall and resubmit the amended. Prior to that, the Auditor General was not accepting them. It was only on the 16th of April that the amended public accounts were accepted.
Okay, so the amended public accounts accepted by the Auditor General on April 16th. Are there still issues with the amended public accounts in terms of the Ministry of Finance broadly not having submitted evidence for some of the numbers in the accounts?
Well, I just want to make sure that I got the first point clear. That I'm saying that any allegation is crystal, right?
Yeah.
That we are saying it's patently false. Okay, that any allegation that the amended public accounts received by the Auditor General on the 16th of April, according to her letter, that those were backdated is patently false. The whole purpose of going to Parliament to get extension of time is to clarify issues. So there are issues to be clarified, of course. I have said in another place that a management letter was received on the same day that the report was finalized and sent to the Parliament. And the management letter requests information and so on. And there were other bits of correspondence requesting information. You have to understand, there were requests for information. And what the public servants have told me is that when they tried to provide it, that is when the whole thing began, where they told me that the Auditor General's office was not willing to accept the information. So there were questions, and they had answers to the questions, which we were unable to submit. So yes, of course, since we have the extension now to the end of May, that is to allow the public servants in the Ministry of Finance to submit information as requested.
And my understanding is that there is a sum of $2.6 billion, which was as a result of the issues surrounding the new system at the central bank. And there's also a sum of $784 million, thereabout, that the Ministry of Finance did not provide any evidence for. Can you comment on that?
Well, as you know, I've appointed an internal team, and I think they need to clarify that as well. I saw the leader opposition somehow making the front page of the Guardian today, saying that the investigation into what transpired is a sham. But I want to clear that up as well. During the Senate debate on the motion to extend the times under Section 24 and Section 25 of the Exchequer and Audit Act, one of the independent senators asked me, essentially, if I am to paraphrase the question, these are not his exact words. Who was responsible for the error? And I said then, and I'm still saying it, that when one talks to the persons in the central bank, you get one story. They introduced an electronic clearing system, check clearing system, and it was functioning effectively. And, whatever errors may have been posted were corrected and, notified and so on. That's what you hear the central bank saying. They introduced this new electronic clearing system, check clearing system, and it was working. That's what they're saying. And then when you talk to the persons in the Board of Inland Revenue, this is all reported to me, by the way, by the public servants. Because remember, I want to repeat, no Minister of Finance gets involved in the preparation of these accounts, submission of them, dating of them, or anything like that. It's all done by the public servants in the Treasury in particular, who have to rely on information from the Board of Inland Revenue. Because this is all about revenue, okay? When you talk to the persons in the Board of Inland Revenue, because I've seen the central bank's statement of their version, let's call it, of events, and I've seen the Board of Inland Revenue statement of their version of events, they're contradictory. So I had said in the Parliament, look, I don't want to dive too deep into this because, you have one group of public servants saying X, another group saying Y. So the whole purpose of this team that has been appointed and is headed by retired Justice David Harris is to talk to all the public servants involved and see if we could get some clarity on what really happened, basically. Because I did not want to answer at that point, and I still don't want to answer at this point and say which person was at fault. It's not clear.
Are the public servants obliged to talk with the team?
Well, I guess a public servant might adopt a position that they don't want to, but I don't expect that. I expect cooperation from all concerned. I've already received reports from all concerned on the matter. I've already received reports from the various divisions telling me, as far as they are concerned, what transpired. So they've already spoken, if that will help you. I didn't see the point being made there at all. This is an internal investigation. This is not a commission of inquiry or anything like that. This is not where you're going to compel witnesses to come and give evidence and so on. This is simply a high-powered team trying to establish what really happened. Okay?
To reply to the opposition leader's criticisms, so she said, use the word sham, hand-picked.
You're very generous. You're very generous. Well, the nonsense uttered by the leader of the opposition, it's nonsense because in the Senate, I said that I am going to conduct an internal investigation to investigate the facts within the Ministry of Finance. So who is supposed to pick the team? I ask the leader of the opposition to pick the team? It's nonsense. As I said, this is not a commission of inquiry. And even in a commission of inquiry, the cabinet selects the members of the commission of inquiry.
She had said about Public Service Commission setting up. I think she had wanted a team from Public Service Commission
to investigate what?
So, well, the whole thing.
What whole thing?
I'm not sure the parameters are.
Neither. I don't. You sure? She is sure. You see, there are two different things here. We, as Minister of Finance, I have to find out what happened.
Well, there's a money thing, but there's also the whole interactions between your offices and this independent post holder. That's really just as much. In fact, that's actually almost become the bigger issue.
You mean from your point of view?
Well, I think in the public eye,
Yes.
$781 million money comes and goes, but
I beg your pardon?
But it has become the
No,
bigger
could you
issue.
just repeat what you just said?
Mr. Immert, you have been
You said
accused
780
of, you have
million
been
comes and
accused
goes?
of bullying an independent office holder. Some very harsh words, right? So that has actually become the greater issue, and I think that I thought actually that was what you were going to discuss today.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, could you frame it as a question, please?
Well, how do you respond to allegations of a direct approach of a politician to a constitutionally protected independent office holder who has accused you of arrogance and bullying?
So you've been around a long time, right, Sean? At least 20 years, right? Not so? You are aware of the term sub judice? I have seen a claim, I believe it's a constitutional motion, Attorney General, that has been filed against the Attorney General. I've been sent a copy of it. I have read in the papers what purports to be an account of it, although apparently I think at least one newspaper got it wrong. And I am looking at what is in this claim. But you couldn't possibly expect me to come here in public on a microphone and respond to a claim that is before the courts. You can't be serious.
But you're not a party to it. It's your colleague who's a party, so you could...
I could what?
Well, answer the allegations.
So I, as I said in the Senate, I didn't come in town last, The person who heads Freedom Law Chambers is somebody called Ananram Logan. I'm not stupid. You think I'm going to say something here to get a pre-action letter tomorrow? Come on, Sean. Do better than that.
Can I ask a related issue? Do you agree with the Auditor General's comment that the timing of the $182 million deposit to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund was, quote, in contravention of the requirements of the HSF Act, unquote?
That's an interesting point. The way revenue is calculated, the actual revenue is never really determined or cannot be determined until 3 to 4 months after the end of the fiscal year, because you have receivers of revenue have to report, and not everybody reports. Well, it's impossible for everybody to report on the 30th of September. Some people are still receiving revenue on the 30th of September, and that's an end of a quarter, okay? So that if one has to deposit into the Heritage and Civilization Fund the surplus revenue for the fiscal year, and you are required to do it virtually immediately, by definition it's going to be inaccurate because you don't know what the actual surplus revenue is. So that the whole question of depositing virtually immediately the surplus revenue is really an impossibility. So that the Act appears to have some ambiguity in it. And if you've been studying the papers, which I'm sure you have, you will see that that is even referenced in the report that you're referring to, that there is some ambiguity there, and perhaps the Act should be amended. So that's the whole point there.
I believe the Act on this particular issue speaks to 1 month after the end of the financial year.
It's almost impossible because the closing of accounts is required by January 31st. The whole point of the auditing of the financial year 2023, the whole question of Section 24 of the Exchequer and Audit Act, the deadline for submission of the information on the public accounts is January 31st, 2024. Well, January 31st of any year, which is 4 months after. So it's virtually impossible. It's something that has to be looked at. And you see in these particular cases, the budget division is constantly revising the figures, because when the budget is delivered, you will have an estimate. Then a month or two later, you have a revised figure. Then 3 months later, you have an actual figure. So if you actually look in budget documents, you'll see these three terms are used: revised, original, revised, actual. So it's virtually impossible within 30 days of the end of the financial year. You might not even have received all of the reports from receivers of revenue with respect to the revenue. So it's virtually impossible. So it's something that needs to be settled.
Has any Auditor General... So let me preface this by saying I don't imagine that this is a today issue. The deposit that came in December and should have come in at the end of October, December 2022. has any Auditor General drawn attention to the quote-unquote late deposit into the HSF before this last one?
I'm not aware, but I'm glad you brought it up because I'm certainly going to check, because there were deposits in the past, and therefore by definition they should all have been in October, and how could they have been accurate if it was, in October? So thank you for that. I'm going to look at that and see.
The Auditor General also drew attention to Section 13.1 of the Heritage and Stabilization Act, which deals with the amount of money to be deposited to the HSF. She said that was, quote-unquote, open to interpretation. Do you agree?
I beg your pardon? You want to just give me a complete quote there?
In the Auditor General's note in the accounts of the 2023 HSF annual report, she said that the Section 13.1 of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund Act, which deals, these are my words, which deals with the amount of money to be deposited to the HSF, I believe it's 60% of the surplus, is, quote, open to interpretation.
Well, I mean, that's an open-ended statement.
Have you seen the reference that I'm
I'm just
making?
saying it's an open-ended statement because of apparently the Attorney General's letter regarding legal fees was also open to interpretation. Anything is open to interpretation. So, I mean, it's a statement that anybody can make, that this is open to interpretation, because how could you ask me such a question? You want me to interpret the statute here in this press conference today without legal advice? You can't be serious.
Right. One last question on the HSF. Why was the HSF report for 2023 made public on May the 8th, yesterday, when it could have been made public earlier?
Where did you get that from?
Where did I get what from?
That it was made public on May the 8th.
Sorry, it was uploaded to the Ministry of Finance website on May the 8th.
But it would have been, the Auditor General would have reported on it and it would have gone to the Parliament. So I don't understand what you're saying.
Documents that go to Parliament are not always available to the media.
So you're saying the Ministry of Finance is ahead of the Parliament?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying
Mr. Wilson, I will look into what you're saying. I have no idea what you're talking about. What I do know is that the Auditor General would have reported back in January or February or whatever date it was. And what I do know is that that report would have gone to the Parliament, would have been laid on the table, would have been available for public scrutiny. If you only saw it yesterday, I'm sorry.
It was uploaded yesterday.
Uploaded where?
The Ministry of Finance website.
Have you checked the Parliament's website?
No.
I know. So, next question.
Gentlemen, is this the first time an Auditor General has to defend itself or office against the state?
I beg your pardon? I don't understand the question.
Can you give examples when the Auditor General had to use an alternate law to defend or pursue litigation against a private company on behalf of the state, and did they have full access to the state's funds?
I don't know who has sent you that question, but could you read it better, please?
Okay, I'll do the first one again.
Okay.
Right. Is this the first time an Auditor General, in this case the lady, Mrs. what's her name? Ramdas, right? But I'm talking about the office, has had to defend itself or office against the state?
I can't answer that question. That's a loaded question.
Can you give examples when the Auditor General had to use an attorney at law to defend or pursue litigation against a private company on behalf of the state, and did they have full access to state funds to pursue or defend the matter?
Private company? What private company? Any private company? But that's a hypothetical question. I can't answer that either.
Examples of
Now, hold on. You're talking about a private company. What private company are you talking about?
any.
But
I mean, in history, has there ever been?
you're asking me whether the Auditor General had to fire an attorney to deal with a private company. And come on, I couldn't possibly answer that. I don't know what private company you're talking about. You don't have an example of that? You don't? Well, I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay.
Minister Doris Polo, Guardian Media.
Mhm.
Coming out of post-cab, yesterday, I think the Court of Appeal would have made an announcement as it relates to the Office of the Commissioner of Police. Has Cabinet taken a decision to extend the top cop's tenure?
I am unable to answer that question at this point in time.
Ground TV6, he was just wondering, going back to the original issue you had raised, the error, as it were, has this ever happened before in the preparation of essentially the government's financial statements for a financial year?
Well, as I've said before, both in Parliament and outside of Parliament, I have checked with many former permanent secretaries, people who worked in the Auditor General's department. There are people in the Ministry of Finance right now, senior officials who have held senior positions in the Auditor General's department and so on. And I'm told, I mean, this is something that will be established, that it is common practice that when errors are discovered, that the information is presented and that the information is treated with. That's what I'm told, going back 50 years. That is a normal thing, that errors will be discovered, because obviously you're not going to get it right on the first go-round. You submit the documents, the auditor will look at them, the auditor will have a whole bunch of questions. I didn't see this document, I didn't see that supporting document. Could you clarify? This number doesn't seem to be right. Could you check that? And responses are submitted and treated with. That's what I'm told for the last 50 years. It's normal to treat with errors. That's my information.
Maybe wondering, well, what about the present state of, let's say, the accuracy of audited statements from the government going forward, let's say, for this financial year, in light of the litigation and the issues? What assurances could you give to the public in that regard?
Well, this is the whole point of the audit process. The audit is there as an independent check to verify the accuracy of the statements. But it doesn't stop at a particular time or in a particular place. It's an ongoing process. And even if, I'll give you an example, even if at the end of the day, the material understatement in revenue is not attributed to fiscal year 2023, it'll come into fiscal year 2024. So it'll look as if we got more money in 24 than we actually did, because this is cash that was actually received and banked and is out there, in the system. The money that we're talking about, the tax revenue, was actually received, put in the bank account, paid out, to various people for goods and services and other recurrent expenditures. So the money is there. But if for some reason it can't be accounted for in this year, 2023, it'll come into 2024. It will make the 2024 figures look better than it should, which is not something we would want at all. We would be striving for accuracy.
Anyway, or has it had any impact in terms of the mid-year review of the budget?
No, not at all. You see, we have a process. You see, let me explain how this thing happened. And I spoke about that in the Parliament. The commercial banks send checks to the central bank. These are refund checks. So you're dealing with tax refunds. So when the Board of Inland Revenue is reporting on revenue, which is taxes of various types, they have to give you a net figure so that the revenue for any fiscal year is net. It is not gross. The Treasury will only know what the gross figure is in terms of checks written. So every check that is written by a permanent secretary and sent out and given to someone for anything, the Treasury will have a record of that. So the Treasury will know in any given year, $70 billion, I'm just using a number, in checks have been written. But people don't cash the checks right away, especially if checks are written in August and September. Some people would cash those checks in October, in November. The way the financial year works, if the check is not cashed by the 30th of September, it's not counted as revenue in that particular year. It's when it's cashed, it's counted as revenue. Okay? So what the Treasury will have a statement of all the checks they have issued and written, have been written, but they won't know what has actually been cashed. Only the central bank knows that, because the commercial banks send these checks to the central bank. The central bank collates all the checks and so on, batches them and so on, and sends them to the Board of Inland Revenue. So the Inland Revenue will say, all right, we now have to subtract all the checks that have been cashed from the revenue we received, because again, the Board of Inland Revenue is receiving tax. So they're receiving gross tax. So they receive a value-added tax, they receive income tax, whatever. But from that has to be subtracted the refunds. So after the commercial banks deal with the central bank, they think the documents are then sent to the Board of Inland Revenue. They will then deduct the refunds and give you a net figure. So it doesn't affect the actual outcome, what they call the fiscal outturn. In the year, it doesn't affect it. And one of the checks and balances is the budget division is constantly looking at the numbers. And it was the budget division that subsequently discovered this, because we have to deal with the rating agencies, we have to deal with the IMF and so on. And it is the budget division that prepares all the documentation with respect to revenue and expenditure that goes to these agencies. And it was the budget division that discovered something is wrong with the amount of revenue that is being reported to the Auditor General for fiscal 2023. But it doesn't affect the actual figures, if you understand what I mean. And with respect of a question that you asked Mr. Wilson, not very well, but I will refine your question for you.
Thank you.
It turns out that there were about $780 million worth of tax refund checks written in fiscal 2022, which were cashed in fiscal 2023. And that is what that discrepancy is all about. So you had $800 million worth of checks written in fiscal 22, which then were cashed in fiscal 2023. You follow? That is what caused the problem there. Okay? And that is that alleged missing number. It's not missing at all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You said the Auditor General's Department accepted the amended public accounts on April the 16th, 2024. How confident are you that the Auditor General is going to produce an amended audit within the time frame set by Parliament?
You're asking me the kind of question that somebody asked the Attorney General. You asked me for a subjective opinion. I don't submit the Auditor General's report. I don't prepare it. So you're asking me to read a crystal ball and figure out whether the Auditor General will submit amended accounts? Okay. I don't know.
So let me ask it from a different angle. What would be the consequence if the Auditor General does not complete the audit of 2023 within the time frame set by Parliament?
Again, you're asking me for an opinion on a matter that I think is before the court. Yes, go and read.
Can I add to Ms. Polo's question to get some details of the status of Mrs. Erla Harewood Christopher? Have you received like an appraisal report on her year plus in office yet? Is it satisfactory? And then even anecdotally, we have had a couple of incidents, like the Coco Reed mass shooting, the Hart Place mass shooting, and then these things dotted, with too much frequency all over the place. Is there any formal way of anything to guide your thinking, whether it's your formal appraisal or your anecdotal thoughts of the cabinet members?
I'm very confused at that question.
Right. So I think the public would like to get some idea on the thinking that's going to shape the future of the present Commissioner of Police. Is she going to be extended? Now, you kind of shut down my colleague's question.
I didn't shut it down. I said I was unable to answer it. I'm sorry. Words have meanings. Okay. I didn't shut anybody down. I don't want to see myself in an affidavit. Okay?
But you were not able to answer that. So we wanted to get an idea of the thinking. So in terms the thinking that Cabinet may, how this thing may be going. So in terms of whether you've got formal appraisal reports, that would be via the PSC, I guess, and then also the anecdotal, the mood, the feeling, the gut feeling on different things happening. So any thoughts, please?
Have you received anything?
No, I don't. I'm not the Honourable Acting Prime Minister.
You haven't received a performance evaluation report?
Madam Christopher?
Yeah. Since you bring it up, you haven't received it, right?
But I'm not you.
I'm just asking you. Listen, there's something you need to understand. I think you're a little off target here. The tenure of the present Commissioner of Police expires on the 14th of May. Okay? And I suggest you familiarize yourself with the decision of Madam Justice Kangaloo with respect to the whole question of how one appoints an acting Commissioner of Police. And I think the decision was it has to go to Parliament, am I correct?
And it may or may not.
Yeah. So that I would suggest you go and look at the law, and I think it will give you some idea as to what has to take place.
Think that she'll be Commissioner in a year from now? Will we still have her, do you think? Or
But in the same way I was unable to answer Ms. Polo, I'm unable to answer you.
Can I ask the Attorney General whether he thinks the Electronic Transaction Act pertains,
By the way, we've been going pretty long, so let's wrap it up in about 5 minutes.
pertains to legal documents to and fro the judiciary, to and from the judiciary?
In principle, yes.
Yes, meaning what?
You asked whether I think the Electronic Transactions Act pertains to legal documents to and fro the judiciary. And I said, in answer to that question, in principle, yes.
From Loop News. Two quick questions.
Be very quick, and this will be last two.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just with regard to the digitization of the court process, just referencing the last update on the Sitahal matter where the original documents were requested, which kind of created a bit of a stall. I was just wondering if there's any progress with digitizing so that these hiccups could be resolved. And a second question, any update on the Power report which was to be sent to the DPP's office? I'm not sure if you can respond. I'm just...
Well, in response to the first question, I would not wish to comment on things within the purview of the judiciary in terms of what is taking place in the judiciary on the Sitahal matter. And I have also gone on record as of yesterday to say that to the extent that that issue has emerged as a conversation between the Chief Justice and the Director of Public Prosecutions, I don't want to comment on what the Director of Public Prosecutions is on record as saying. So that's my answer to the first question. In answer to the second question, yes, the Paria report has been sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Well, to kind of look at things from a fresh perspective, do we think that the judiciary is under-resourced or underfunded if such...
Sean, I did say that was the last two questions, so this is now the absolute last question. Please frame it properly.
So, okay, in light of what colleagues have mentioned, can one surmise that the judiciary is being under-resourced and underfunded, or are we not getting value for money if we can't get a certain things sent from certain persons to other persons?
No, it's not the same thing.
My answer to that is that is not a question that is deserving of an answer because it surmises and assumes many things that I am not privy to, and I think it would be purely speculative on my part to answer those very many questions that you asked, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
$50 by 20, $50 by 25.
This is Kyron Pollard. When you play, do it the legal way. Don't bet on illegal gaming.
I'm happy that I won the band. I played Big Ride and I won the band. All players continue playing. One day you'll be a winner just like me. And I hope the lucky star shine on you all and you win one day.
Welcome to this afternoon.